In August 2014, Five Nights at Freddy's 1 released to the world. Now to me, this was, in my opinion, one of the scariest games I've ever played. As a younger me, was absolutely captivated by not only the scares of this game, but as a whole, the ambience beside the office and the footsteps you hear coming towards the hall, and ultimately the ambiguity of what's actually coming towards you while you play the game and watch the cameras. Now to me, when you look back all the way to FNAF 1, when you had that sort of quietness, and realistically, right, we know that the FNAF 1 game is a little bit outdated. I think it's still one of the better ones. However, for me, when it comes to the actual scariness of the game, when you play it for the first time, I think you can find this game really scary nowadays. However, in my opinion, if we fast forward all the way to FNAF Security Breach and FNAF Ruin is the two games I'm going to be comparing to today, it just loses all sense of ambience in my opinion, and we're going to compare the two games as of right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to FNAF 1. So here we are in the office. As you can see, it is dead quiet. After the phone call rings, you have nothing but silence. However, there is a little bit of ambient noise coming from the pizzeria. You sit in the office as you hear footsteps is coming towards you. The sound of the fan, the silence until it's broken by the footsteps. Wondering what's coming towards your office and what'll happen if they reach the office and get inside. Now that is what I find really scary about FNAF 1. Yes, it's not that scary anymore, but when you actually pay attention to the ambience of FNAF 1, it is quite scary, especially when that absolutely hounding music begins to play. And in my opinion, that is really scary on first playthrough, or if you're just not used to horror or get scared easily. When it comes to that sort of horror, I find that really creative. However, if we fast forward to FNAF Security Breach, we're going to show how this game has, in my opinion, just lost all sense of somewhat fear on ambience that ultimately created the series that we know today. So here we are in FNAF Security Breach, and as you can see, Roxanne or whoever it might be will chase us while loud pop music just plays in the background. However, we do have the chance to hide in the closet, but regardless, even if we are caught, a mediocre jump scare awaits us. Now let me straight up compare these two scenes together with the FNAF 1 scene and the FNAF Security Breach scene. Now in my opinion, I find FNAF Security Breach to be a decent game, especially on my first playthrough. I really enjoyed it. However, when we fast forward to Ruin, the so-called scarier version of Security Breach, I find Ruin to not be scary whatsoever. Now, the one thing that could possibly be a result of this is the whole 3D aspect of the games. Now, ultimately, I feel like with FNAF 1 and especially FNAF 4, those first 1 to 4 opening games create some level of ambience that the game just, in my opinion, hasn't been able to replicate, especially in the last two entries. However, I will say this, FNAF Help Wanted and FNAF Help Wanted 2 perfectly recreate this sort of ambience. I really did think those games were quite scary. However, when you go to FNAF Help Wanted 1, it is majority just the OG game. However, it just kind of validates the other point of how good those original games were when it comes to scaring an audience. Now, I'm not ranting on about how, like, I don't like the newer FNAF games, because I do. I will say this. Now, I'm not the absolutely biggest fan of Ruin. I do enjoy playing Security Breach. However, when it comes to the actual scariness of the games, I find that it doesn't scare anyone whatsoever, and I do feel like this whole franchise has gone in a more, oh, we have to be child friendly sort of way. However, when we go into that sort of category of child friendly horror, technically the original, I'm going to compare the original 1 to 4, or even Sister Location, or even Pizzeria Simulator for that matter, there is nothing in those games that technically give the games a sort of mature rating or anything like that. Because majority of the time, the somewhat, gory bits are all in 8-bit form. And so when it comes to that, you can't really say that, oh, it's made for kids is the whole, excuse for the games not being scary, in my opinion. Now, this is just purely my opinion, by the way. If you find Ruin scary or you find Security Breach scary, fair enough. That's all power to you. But there is one redeeming factor specifically about Security Breach that I will mention, and that is the endoskeleton part. However, it is quite tedious. However, it is a quite scary scene. And what does it use to actually make it somewhat scary? the ambience. We are in the bunker, like the basement level of the Pizzaplex, in the complete darkness, only brightened up by a single flashlight. That's what created an actual tense and scary scene, having to use those sort of buckets to hide in, the bins to hide in, to make sure the endoskeletons couldn't find us. That was a really good, part of the game, in my opinion, that actually showed some scary elements. However, to my knowledge, that is the only part of the game that actually has that sense of ambience and actually has that sense of scariness about it. And I also will give Ruin props for the whole mini music men, I think it was. I'm pretty sure that's their names. There is some sense of intensity around that scene, because sometimes when it comes to actually, getting the last security node, when it comes to that, when you have the sort of like when they're all running past you and you just have to sit there and hope they don't see you, that is quite intense, and I really did appreciate that in Rome, because I did find that quite scary. However, when it comes to the games as a whole, I don't find these games scary whatsoever. Now, that obviously could just be me growing up and ultimately being a sort of nostalgia freak, but to me, I just find that the original FNAF games have this sort of spark, and the way it's made, it's how scary it actually is. And in my opinion, I just feel like the game has gone definitely into a more child-friendly level. Now, it's nothing like Garten Ban child-friendly, thankfully, but in my opinion, I just feel like the game has taken too big of a drop into that sort of mascot horror genre, and has let the likes of Poppy's Playtime ultimately rise to the top. Because when you think about it, the original Poppy's Playtime was like, it wasn't technically insanely scary. It was scary on first playthrough. It was very much categorized as, oh, it's this mascot horror, it's gonna be very child-friendly. However, Chapter 3 came along and just threw everything out the window and ultimately, established it as, the go-to mascot horror game now. So I feel that when FNAF, this massive stature of FNAF, and you can't even say that I'm not a fan, look at my background. I love this series, but when it comes to how it's just not that scary anymore, it really does sadden me. I really want to see a very scary FNAF game again. Now, I'm not saying that Steelwool can't do that. I am 100% confident they can do that, because they are a very talented company. Like, look what they did with Help Wanted. So I'm very, very confident that they can make a very scary FNAF game again. However, it just comes to the fact that, are they going to go for kid horror, friendly, friends with Freddy, which I did find enjoyable, to be honest. But to me, I just find that this game has gone so far from what it originally came from, for the whole fact of, oh, this is a very disturbing story. Like, when you think of the FNAF story from the original games, it's a pretty disturbing story, to, oh no, we're getting chased by a rock and roll alligator while pop and rap music plays over it. And even when we get jump scared, in my opinion, it could be the worst jump scare of the series. I know Pizza Sim, people do not like that jump scare, and same with Springtrap's jump scare. But ultimately, I find the FNAF Ruin and Security Breach jump scares to be really, really poor. Because I almost feel that the fact of before you get caught is the sort of, ambience and sort of intensity, like, oh my god, I'm about to get caught. But I feel that it's more like, oh, I got caught, I have to restart again, here we go. I've definitely get that more of a feeling around Security Breach and Ruin, in my opinion. But ultimately, that is just my opinion on the state of FNAF at the moment. I do feel like it's definitely lost a lot of its scare factor when it comes to recent games. However, FNAF Help Wanted 1 and FNAF Help Wanted 2 have thankfully kept that sort of scare factor for me. I really do love it because of the VR section of it. They're just, the whole thing of it being in VR is super, super cool to me. But let me know what you think of this whole opinion in the comments below. I'd really love to hear your opinions on the current state of FNAF. Is it scary for you? Is it not scary for you? And if you find Security Breach scary, that is perfectly fine. That's just my opinion, and you also have your opinions, and that's what's so cool about the likes of horror games and horror movies. There's so many different opinions, and that is why I love having conversations with you in the comments below about these sort of opinions. I love you guys so much, so thank you all so much for the support on the channel recently. I really do appreciate every last one of you who's hit that subscribe button. It really means the world to me. So thank you all so much for watching. I really did hope you did enjoy. Thank you all so much for watching. If you did enjoy, though, make sure to smash the like button down below and make sure to subscribe, and I really do hope you have the most amazing day. Stay safe and peace. First shot of this episode, Tammy picks this house.
Oh, what about that one?
Now, if you ask me, that is the, worst house you can pick. It has wallpaper on the outside.